The 1960s were packed with cars that defined an era. But here's the truth. Most of the ones you've actually seen are just the tip of the iceberg. Beneath the headlines of Mustangs, Camaros, and GTOs, there were machines so rare, so unusual, that even seasoned collectors only whisper about them. Have you ever stumbled across a piece of rolling history that feels more myth than reality? Well, buckle up because you're about to. 1961. Chrysler 300G convertible. Sometimes power doesn't scream, it growls. And the Chrysler 300G convertible was one of those machines that proved luxury and speed could coexist. This wasn't your average boulevard cruiser. Under the hood sat Chrysler's Wild Cross Ram 413 cubic inch V8, rated at 375 horsepower. Those long, curving intake manifolds weren't just engineering theater. They delivered torque so monstrous it could shove the big convertible forward like a rocket sled. But the real kicker, Chrysler only built 337 convertibles in 1961. That's not a typo. Think about it. In an era when Chevy was cranking out hundreds of thousands of Impalas, Chrysler quietly slipped out a few hundred of these fire-breathing beasts dressed up in evening wear. Styling? Pure jet-age drama. The 300G wore the famous canted headlights, sharp tail fins, and a cabin dripping with leather and chrome. Inside, you didn't just sit, you commanded, with a full set of aircraft-inspired gauges and optional swivel seats that made climbing in feel like boarding a spaceship. Performance was no less impressive. Period tests reported 0 to 60 in around 8 seconds, blistering for a massive luxury convertible at the time. Chrysler pitched it as part of their Letter Series cars, special, high-performance grand tourers that blended refinement with raw punch. And the G stood proudly in that line as one of the most elegant bruisers Detroit ever unleashed. Today, spotting one is almost like seeing a unicorn. It's not just rare, it's practically extinct outside elite collections. The 1961 Chrysler 300G convertible was proof that muscle could wear a tuxedo and still knock you flat. 1963. Studebaker Avanti R2 supercharged. The 1960s had no shortage of wild experiments, but none looked quite like the Studebaker Avanti. This wasn't just a car. It was Studebaker's last big swing at staying alive. And man, what a swing it was. Designed in a rush by Raymond Loewy's team, the fiberglass-bodied Avanti looked like nothing else on American roads. Smooth nose, Coke bottle curves, no grille. This thing looked like it had flown in from the future. Now add to that futuristic shell a supercharged V8. The R2 version packed a Paxton-blown 289 cubic inch engine rated at 290 horsepower, though insiders knew it punched harder. Drop the hammer and the Avanti could break 0 to 60 in around 7 seconds, quicker than a '63 Corvette. For a Studebaker. Wrap your head around that. Production was a disaster. Studebaker promised thousands, but delays, cost, overruns, and a crumbling company meant only about 1,200 R2s saw the light of day in 1963. That's barely a sneeze compared to Ford's Mustang Tsunami just a year later. Inside, the Avanti carried aircraft-inspired dials and safety-first touches like a built-in roll bar. It was fast, safe, stylish, and exclusive, basically the anti-Detroit muscle car. But America wasn't ready. Buyers wanted flash and chrome, not sleek fiberglass and innovation. Today, spotting an Avanti R2 is like finding an artifact from an alternate timeline. It was the car that could have saved Studebaker, but instead became its swan song. Rare, fast, and futuristic, the Avanti R2 proved Studebaker went out swinging, and it left behind a ghost of what could have been. 1969 AMC AMX /3 prototype. Imagine this. American Motors, the company best known for building practical family cars, suddenly decides to create a mid-engine supercar to take on Ferrari and Lamborghini. Sounds like a fever dream, right? That's exactly what the AMC AMX/3 was. A jaw-dropping prototype that came frighteningly close to production. The AMX R3 was styled by Giotto Bizzarini, the same Italian legend who had a hand in the Ferrari 250 GTO. The result was pure European exotic with an American twist. Long, sleek lines, muscular haunches, and a stance that looked ready to pounce. But under that body lurked Detroit firepower. AMC's 390 cubic inch V8, producing 340 horsepower and a tidal wave of torque. This was no paper tiger. During testing on the Monza track in Italy, the AMX/3 reportedly hit 170 miles per hour, a number that put it right in the mix with Europe's finest exotics. Even the handling, courtesy of a specially designed steel monocoque chassis, impressed. And yet, only 6 cars were ever built. Why? Because AMC's budget reality collided with its supercar dreams. Hand-building exotic cars wasn't something America's smallest automaker could bankroll, especially when the muscle wars at home demanded affordable performance. The AMX/3 died before it could prove itself in showrooms. Today, each surviving AMX3 is a multi-million-dollar collector's treasure. They're so rare, most gearheads will live their whole lives without seeing one outside of a magazine or museum. The AMX3 stands as one of the boldest what-if moments in American car history. Imagine if AMC had pulled it off, we might talk about them today in the same breath as Ferrari. Instead, it's a ghost story wrapped in steel and speed. 1962, Pontiac Bonneville XP400, concept char promo car. Pontiac in the early 60s was already cooking up performance legends, but then they went a step further. The Bonneville XP400. Originally crafted as a promotional and showpiece car, this rare bird blurred the line between concept car and production special. What made it special? For starters, the XP400 was based on the sleek Bonneville convertible, but upgraded with every piece of Pontiac's go-fast arsenal. Under the hood was a 421 cubic inch Super Duty V8, tuned to about 376 horsepower. This was the kind of engine Pontiac's factory drag racers loved, and dropping it into a luxury cruiser made for one wild package. Styling was flamboyant even by early 60s standards. Loaded with chrome, a luxurious interior, and unique trim, the XP400 wasn't shy about flexing. But the truth is, very few were ever built. Just enough for promotional tours, dealer showrooms, and magazine spreads. Estimates suggest fewer than 20 examples survive today. Performance lived up to the looks. The XP400 could pull strong quarter-mile times while still pampering its driver with plush leather and gadgets. It was an oddball blend of brute force and showroom glamour, the kind of machine meant to lure buyers into showrooms with the promise of Pontiac's rising performance image. But it never made the leap into mass production. It was simply too expensive, too specialized, and too radical for the average buyer in 1962. Instead, it faded into obscurity, remembered only by hardcore Pontiac fans and lucky collectors who might own one today. The XP400 remains a symbol of Pontiac's fearless experimentation. Rare, bold, and almost forgotten, it's a time capsule of when automakers weren't afraid to dream and actually put those dreams on the road, even if just for a moment. 1967. Cadillac Eldorado. When people think Cadillac, they picture massive rear-drive land yachts cruising down the highway. But in 1967, Cadillac threw a curveball. The first year Eldorado, a front-wheel drive luxury coupe that looked like nothing else on the road. Yes, front-wheel drive. Long before it became common in economy cars, Cadillac used it to improve traction, space, and smoothness in a personal luxury flagship. Borrowing its underpinnings from Oldsmobile's daring Toronado, Cadillac wrapped the idea in sharper sheet metal, crisper lines, and unmatched prestige. Under the hood was a 429 cubic inch V8 making 340 horsepower. Despite its size, the Eldorado moved with surprising urgency, hitting 0 to 60 in under 9 seconds. On the highway, it floated, quiet and composed, like a magic carpet trimmed in chrome. Inside, the experience was pure Cadillac. Leather seats, wood accents, and automatic everything. But the way it drove was almost European, stable, balanced, and unlike any Cadillac that came before. What makes the 1967 Eldorado rare isn't just its groundbreaking engineering, but its survival rate. Fewer were built than Cadillac's bread-and-butter sedans, and pristine examples are scarce today. Collectors prize them as the moment Cadillac proved it wasn't afraid to innovate. Styling sealed the deal. Knife-edged lines, hidden headlights, and a sleek roofline gave the Eldorado a presence no rival could match. It was bold, brash, and classy all at once. The first-year Eldorado wasn't just another Cadillac, it was a shot across the bow. It told the world that even the most tradition-bound American brand could take a risk, step into the future, and still look like royalty doing it. Rare, daring, and stylish, it rewrote Cadillac's playbook forever. 1966, Oldsmobile Toronado. If you think front-wheel drive is boring, think again. In 1966, Oldsmobile dropped a bombshell on the American car market with the Toronado, the first mass-produced front-drive American car since the Cord 810 back in the 1930s. And it wasn't just a gimmick. This thing was a 4,300-pound rocket disguised as a luxury coupe. Under that long, low hood sat a 425 cubic-inch super rocket V8, cranking out 385 horsepower and 475 pound-feet of torque. Instead of spinning the rear wheels like every other Detroit bruiser, all that muscle went straight to the front. Sounds insane, right? But somehow it worked. Test drivers of the day praised the Toronado's stability, traction, and uncanny smoothness at high speeds. Styling was just as radical. The Toronado looked like something carved out of marble, slab sides, hidden headlights, and a fastback roofline that oozed futuristic confidence. Step inside, and you were greeted by a flat-floor no-drive-shaft tunnel thanks to FWD, a dramatic dash, and the kind of plush comfort Oldsmobile was known for. Sure, it wasn't perfect. Torquey steer was real, and the car understeered if you pushed too hard. But for buyers in 1966, the Toronado was a revelation. It proved front-wheel drive wasn't just for quirky Europeans. It could power a full-sized American luxury coupe into the future. Production numbers were modest for the first year, and survivors today are cherished by collectors who understand just how daring this car really was. The '66 Toronado wasn't just a car. It was a shot of adrenaline to a brand known for playing it safe. Rare, bold, and ahead of its time, it turned Oldsmobile into an innovator and gave Cadillac the courage to follow with the Eldorado. 1969 Chevrolet Corvette ZL1. Forget everything you know about rare Corvettes. This isn't about a Stingray with fancy trim or a big block option. This is the mythical Corvette ZL1, a car so rare that only 2 exist. Yes, 2. That's not limited production. That's practically one step above vaporware. What made the ZL1 legendary was its engine. Chevrolet stuffed it with an all-aluminum 427 cubic-inch V8, originally designed for Can-Am racing. Officially rated at 430 horsepower, real numbers were closer to 500. And because it was aluminum, it weighed 100 pounds less than a standard iron big block. That meant insane performance for its time. With slicks, these cars could dip into the low 1100s on the quarter-mile dragster territory. On the outside, the ZL1 looked almost identical to a regular 1969 Corvette. No wild stripes, no flares, no crazy spoilers. It was the ultimate sleeper, a nuclear weapon hiding in a familiar shape. Buyers had to know the secret COPO ordering codes just to get one, and even then, the cost was astronomical. The ZL1 package alone added nearly $5,000 to the price, about as much as a brand new Corvette by itself. Why only two? Because it was just too much. Too expensive, too radical, and too brutal for the average buyer. But for hardcore racers and collectors, the ZL1 became a holy grail. Today, those two cars are priceless museum pieces, rarely seen in public and fiercely protected by collectors. The ZL1 proved that Chevrolet wasn't afraid to go completely over the top when the racing world demanded it. It wasn't just rare, it was an experimental supercar disguised as America's favorite sports car. For Corvette fans, it's the unicorn of the 60s. 1965 Buick Riviera Grand Sport. When people talk about muscle cars, Buick rarely gets top billing. But the 1965 Riviera Grand Sport proved that Buick could build a luxury coupe with the heart of a street fighter. And the rarest version of them all? The Super Wildcat. The Riviera already had presence. With its razor-sharp body lines, hidden headlights, and boat-tail-inspired curves, it looked like a gangster's dream ride. But order the Grand Sport package, and suddenly you were in a different league. Under the hood sat the legendary 425 cubic inch nail-head V8. In Super Wildcat form, with dual 4-barrel carburetors, it pumped out 360 horsepower and 465 pound-feet of torque. That engine didn't just make noise, it made a statement. Buick paired it with a heavy-duty suspension, dual exhaust, and quick ratio steering, giving the Riviera surprising agility for such a big coupe. It could hustle down a quarter-mile in the mid-15s while wrapping its driver in leather, wood trim, and near-silent cruising comfort. But here's the kicker. Fewer than 3,800 Grand Sports were made in 1965, and only a fraction came with the Super Wildcat dual-carb option. That makes them unicorns in the Buick world. Most buyers wanted plush comfort, not big block fury. Today, spotting one is like catching a glimpse of an alternate history, where Buick doubled down on muscle instead of retreating into quiet luxury. The Riviera Grand Sport was living proof that refinement and raw power didn't have to be enemies. Rare, classy, and seriously underrated, it's one of the most forgotten gems of the 1960s. The Riviera Grand Sport wasn't just a car, it was Buick flexing muscles nobody thought it had. 1961 Plymouth Fury Sonoramic Commando. Sometimes rarity doesn't come from low production alone. It comes from being just a little too weird for the mainstream. Case in point, the 1961 Plymouth Fury Sonoramic Commando. At first glance, the Fury looked like another early 60s cruiser, all chrome and skyscraper fins. But under the hood sat one of Detroit's strangest experiments, the Sonoramic Commando Cross Ram V8. Instead of conventional carb placement, Plymouth mounted two 4-barrels on opposite sides of the engine bay, feeding air through long, twisting intake runners that looked more like alien plumbing than car parts. The setup wasn't just theater. It delivered a wallop of low-end torque, making the car launch with an elastic, almost explosive surge. Buyers could spec engines from a 361 to a thundering 413 cubic inches, with power topping 375 horses. In the quarter mile, a well-tuned Fury could shame bigger-name rivals. But there was a catch. The complex intake baffled mechanics, added cost, and offered little benefit for everyday drivers. Pair that with the polarizing 1961 Fury styling, oddball front fascia, exaggerated fins, and all, and the car was destined to be a tough sell. Most buyers walked past, leaving only a handful of Sonoramic Furies on the road. Today, spotting one feels like stumbling onto a time capsule from Detroit's most daring years. Equal parts show and go, the Sonoramic Fury stands as proof that Plymouth was willing to gamble big on outrageous ideas. Too strange for its time, it's unforgettable now. Bold, bizarre, and pure muscle-era magic. 1962 Ford Thunderbird Sports Roadster. The Thunderbird was never shy about style, but in 1962, Ford decided to turn up the flash to 11. Enter the sports Roadster, a limited production version of the Thunderbird that combined glamour, exclusivity, and just enough muscle to make people take notice. The sports Roadster wasn't just a trim package. It transformed the four-seat Thunderbird into something that looked like a European Grand Tourer. The most obvious change was the fiberglass tonneau cover, which turned the rear seats into a sculpted deck, making the car appear like a sleek two-seater. Add in Kelsey Hayes chrome wire wheels, unique badging, and a bold stance, and the sports Roadster looked like money on wheels. But it wasn't all show. Buyers could equip the car with Ford's 390 cubic-inch V8, making 300 horsepower, or step up to the mighty M-Code triple two-barrel version with 340 horsepower. That meant this elegant cruiser could actually back up its looks with real performance. Production numbers, though, were tiny. In 1962, only 1,427 sports Roadsters were built, making them a rarity even when new. Buyers loved the idea, but the extra cost and flamboyant looks limited appeal. Many who wanted a Thunderbird preferred the standard convertible's practicality. Today, the sports Roadster is one of the most collectible Thunderbirds of the 60s. Its combination of outrageous styling and low production numbers make it a true gem. And when you see one rolling by, top down, tonneau cover in place, those wire wheels sparkling in the sun, it's easy to understand why collectors go weak at the knees. The Thunderbird Sports Roadster wasn't practical, it wasn't cheap, and it wasn't subtle. But that's exactly why it's unforgettable. It was Ford showing off, and it worked. 1969 Pontiac Custom S. When people think Pontiac in the late 60s, they think GTO. But hidden in the shadows was a one-year wonder almost nobody remembers. The Pontiac Custom S, released in 1969 as a mid-range model slotted between the Tempest and A. Le Mans, it was essentially Pontiac's oddball experiment, a car that didn't really fit anywhere. On the surface, the Custom S looked like a trimmed-down GTO. Same body style, same bold Pontiac lines, even similar interior cues. But it carried its own identity, with unique badging and trim that separated it from the rest of Pontiac's lineup. Under the hood, buyers could order anything from a mild six-cylinder all the way up to a thundering 400 cubic-inch V8. That meant the Custom S could be anything from a budget cruiser to a legitimate street bruiser. Here's the kicker. Pontiac only offered the Custom S for a single model year. Sales barely topped 80,000 across all trims, and because most buyers flocked to the better-known Le Mans or the Halo GTO, the Custom S quietly disappeared after 1969. That makes surviving examples rare today, especially in high-performance configurations. For collectors, the Custom S represents a fascinating what-if. It's a Pontiac that never found its footing but had all the right bones. Think of it as the forgotten cousin of the GTO, less famous, less loved, but oddly charming because of it. Spotting a Custom S today is like stumbling across a lost chapter of Pontiac history. It's proof that even in the muscle car era, some models slipped through the cracks, only to become rarities decades later. The Custom S might not have had the spotlight, but it carved its own strange little niche. 1968, AMC Javelin SST Trans Am Edition. AMC wasn't about to let Ford and Chevrolet hog all the fun in the pony car wars. In 1968, they rolled out the Javelin, a stylish, affordable coupe that looked ready to play with Mustangs and Camaros. But AMC went further. To compete in SCCA Trans Am racing, they needed homologation specials, and that's where the ultra-rare Javelin SST Trans Am Edition came in. This wasn't just a decal package. The Trans Am Edition featured AMC's 343 cubic-inch V8, performance gearing, and heavy-duty suspension to back up the aggressive looks. Buyers got bold red, white, and blue paint schemes that screamed patriotism, rally stripes, and unique badging. With around 280 horsepower on tap and a curb weight under 3,200 pounds, the car could sprint to 60 in about 7 seconds. Respectable numbers for a brand trying to claw its way into the big leagues. But here's the problem. Almost nobody bought them. AMC was small, its dealer network limited, and its marketing budget microscopic compared to Ford or Chevy. Production numbers for the Trans Am edition were low, and survivors today are incredibly scarce. Yet for those who know, the Javelin SST Trans Am edition is a cult hero. It captured the spirit of late 60s racing when even the underdog wanted a piece of the action. The Javelin may not have won the sales war, but it proved AMC could build a pony car with swagger. Today, finding one feels like hitting the lottery. They're that rare. And when you do, you're looking at AMC's loudest shot in the muscle era's biggest fight. Rare, patriotic, and full of underdog energy, the Javelin Trans Am was AMC punching way above its weight. 1961 DeSoto Adventurer. Final year. By 1961, DeSoto was on life support. Chrysler's mid-tier brand had enjoyed success in the 50s, but by the early 60s, sales collapsed. The 1961 DeSoto Adventurer became the brand's swan song, and it was rare the moment it left the factory. Fewer than 3,000 cars total were built for the 1961 model year, across all trims. That's shockingly low for a major American brand. The Adventurer stood as the top-of-the-line model, loaded with luxury touches like leather interiors, power everything, and heaps of chrome. Styling was a mix of late 50s flamboyance and early 60s restraint. Tail fins were still present, but smaller. The front end more squared off. It looked like a brand trying to modernize but caught between decades. Under the hood, buyers got Chrysler's 361 or 383 cubic inch V8s, with horsepower ranging from 265 to 325. Performance wasn't groundbreaking, but that wasn't the point. The Adventurer was built for comfort, not drag racing. Still, it had enough grunt to cruise the highways with authority. What makes it special today is its finality. The 1961 Adventurer marked the end of DeSoto, a brand that had been part of the American road for over 3 decades. After this, the name disappeared forever. That alone makes surviving examples significant pieces of history. Collectors value them not just for rarity, but for symbolism. The Adventurer is the last gasp of a once proud mark, a rolling reminder of how quickly the auto industry can shift. Rare, stylish, and tinged with melancholy, the 1961 DeSoto Adventurer is one of those classics you may never see in person, but if you do, you're witnessing the closing chapter of a legend. 1967. Mercury Cougar XR 7-G Shelby Influence. In 1967, Ford's Mustang had already stolen the show, but Mercury wanted in on the pony car craze. Their answer was the Cougar, longer, more luxurious, and marketed as the grown-up's Mustang. But the rarest Cougar of all came in 1967, the XR 7G, a Shelby-influenced special edition that almost nobody outside hardcore collectors remembers. The G stood for Dan Gurney, the American racing legend who endorsed the model. Built in limited numbers, the XR 7G came loaded with unique performance and styling cues. You could order it with everything from a 302 small block up to a thundering 428 Cobra jet. Special touches included a hood scoop, fog lights integrated into the grille, bullet-style side mirrors, and unique badging. Inside, drivers were treated to leather upholstery, a wood-rimmed steering wheel, and console-mounted gauges that made the Cougar feel downright European. Performance matched the looks, with the big 390 or 428 under the hood. The XR7G could sprint with the best muscle cars of the era while maintaining an air of sophistication. It was muscle in a tailored suit, but here's the kicker. Fewer than 700 XR7Gs were ever built. Mercury didn't have the Mustang's marketing muscle, and the Cougar never sold in the same astronomical numbers. That makes XR7Gs incredibly rare today. and many casual enthusiasts have never even heard of them. The XR7G was proof that Mercury could play the performance game without sacrificing its upscale image. It was refined, powerful, and tied to a racing legend. Rarely seen today, it's one of the coolest hidden gems of the pony car era. Think of it as a Mustang with manners, and an exclusivity factor that makes collectors drool. 1969 Chrysler 300 Hurst Edition, luxury muscle. By the late 60s, the muscle car wars were roaring, but Chrysler chose a different weapon. A muscle car disguised as a luxury battleship. Enter the 1969 Chrysler 300 Hurst Edition, one of the strangest hybrids of the decade. Built with Hurst performance, the 300 Hurst ditched Chrysler's usual restraint. It wore a fiberglass hood and trunk lid with a massive functional scoop, finished in white with a bold gold racing stripe and Hurst badging. For a Chrysler, it was pure theater. Beneath the flash was real muscle. Standard power came from the 440 cubic inch TNT V8 at 375 horsepower, with the legendary 426 Hemi technically on the order sheet, though almost no one took that gamble. A torque flight automatic, heavy-duty suspension, and brute torque meant the 4,200-pound beast could hustle the quarter mile in the low 15s. Not the fastest muscle car of its day, but certainly the most outrageous. Production was tiny, just 485 units. Buyers weren't typical street racers. They wanted Cadillac-level comfort with muscle car swagger. The cabin delivered in spades, with leather seats, wood trim, and every power option imaginable. This wasn't a bare-knuckle brawler. It was a sledgehammer wrapped in silk. Today, the 300 Hurst stands as one of Chrysler's boldest gambles. Rare, flashy, and impossible to pigeonhole, it was part luxury cruiser, part muscle machine, and all attitude. Too strange to be mainstream, it's unforgettable now. So there you have it, 15 of the rarest American classics of the 1960s, cars that slipped through the cracks of history while the Mustangs and Camaros grabbed the spotlight. Each one tells a story of risk, innovation, or sheer excess. Which one blew your mind the most? The Cadillac in disguise, the supercar that never was, or the muscle wrapped in luxury? Drop your thoughts below, hit subscribe, and keep the engine of conversation running.